where I'm at with you. So feel free to interrupt at any point in time. But I think what Jason and I said I would spend some time talking about, given the view I have on companies that we consult to, and we consult in the digital disruption space, or the companies that we provide resourcing to, where we're seeing changes in demand for skills. And almost everybody I speak to is either in a state of optimism or a state of pessimism about the fourth industrial revolution and the advance of smart algorithms and how that's going to impact jobs. Jason, how long should I speak for? I know we scheduled for an hour.
Speak for until do your presentation. We'll watch the time.
Okay,
if
cool.
there are questions, I think there is a chat box that is available. Write your questions in the chat box over here. So I'll just say hello, everybody. And if you're getting tired, we can answer some questions and carry on. So
okay, perfect.
Let's give that a go. Are you happy with that?
I just don't see your. Just looking for where the actual chat sits. I don't. So
it'll come up here on mine.
Okay, so you can let me know. Okay,
I'll let you know.
Okay, so I think we're all concerned to some extent that our jobs will be taken away, or will there be jobs for our kids, or how am I impacted by the changes that are taking place with machines getting smarter, with the fourth industrial revolution, and with changes in employment. But I guess to start with, we would say that generally on Earth, life's getting better. Less people are dying in wars. People are living longer. So less people are dying of diseases. Some diseases that existed when we were growing up have been just about eradicated. We're now seeing advances in technology where cancer is becoming predictable and preventable. So I think we can accept that we're going to be living long and healthy lives. So I guess the concern that some of us have, or the concern we're seeing, is what if machines take my jobs? How will I survive? How will I thrive? How will I support my family? So this slide's some interesting research from McKinsey, and it's recent. I think it's 2 to 3 years old. And I think what's encouraging about this is it's in almost no jobs, less than 5% of jobs are completely automatable based on technology that's available to us today. So those kind of jobs that sit into that 5% are things like, agricultural sorters. It's not difficult to build a machine to split potatoes up into small potatoes, medium potatoes, and large potatoes. So, those kinds of jobs are going to disappear, and that, many of them already have. But actually, if you look at the other end of the scale, when there's some compassion required, and jobs are not repeatable, they're not large volumes of the same repetitive transaction going through, those jobs are almost unautomatable using technology available today. So a psychiatrist or a lawyer is very hard to automate away. But every other job sits somewhere on that continuum in between, which means 60% of occupations are likely to have 30% of their activities automated in the next short while. So I guess the concern shouldn't be, am I going to lose my job to a machine? It's going to be either how do I use a machine to augment my current capabilities and make me smarter, or to do my job more efficiently. That's the one hand. The other hand is what happens to the 30 or 40% of my time that now becomes available because an algorithm has taken away the repetitive part of my job, the high volume part of my job. So that's that is, I guess, is the question that we should be answering. So what I wanted to talk about today is just some of the roles that will be more likely automated. What new jobs are being created in the marketplace? What should we be doing to keep our skills current as we move into this new age? So I think let me do this. This was interesting research done just recently and came out in a new World Economic Forum report on employment. The first question was, if your country was at war and you were sending your sons and daughters in to go and fight that war, would you prefer an autonomous weapon system, or would you prefer people to go into war? And in almost every case, everybody wanted the machine to do the job in this case. The next one got a little bit more kind of personal. So that you've got a life-limiting illness. Are you going to trust a machine to diagnose that illness and sort of decide on which treatment regime to follow, or do you want to get a doctor to do that for you? And there, the respondents responded kind of almost 50-50. Some would be comfortable with a machine, and some would be more comfortable with a human doctor. If you were brought to trial and falsely accused of a crime, however, almost everybody wanted the human being, the person that's making a judgment call, the person that's going to show compassion. That was the one that they chose of the two. So I think it's interesting that we've got different opinions about technology, and different technologies will scare us, and others will give us comfort. So I think we've all kind of accepted that in the next short while, autonomous cars are going to be a reality. We're not going to be driving ourselves anymore. And no one seems too perturbed about that. The thought of being able to live further from work, less congestion on the roads, and being able to be productive in travel time is more attractive than any of the alternatives. I think Volvo, I saw an ad for Volvo yesterday, was saying that by 2025, their goal is to have nobody driving in a Volvo, being killed or maimed in an accident. So just cars becoming safer as a result of the addition of AI. So I think this particular World Economic Forum report was talking about 133 million jobs being created in this fourth industrial revolution world, and only 75 million jobs being displaced. So almost double the jobs being created that are being displaced. I think the problem here is that those jobs aren't going to be created equally across countries and across economies. And so what you'll find is that more tech-savvy economies are going to benefit extraordinarily from these changes. And then countries where education systems aren't up to steam, where there's poor STEM education, those countries are going to potentially struggle. And I think we've got to think about South Africa being in that category where our education system's not keeping pace with the changes that are taking place. We're battling to get kids through math, science, tuition, high levels of unemployment, large numbers of people battling to get into employment as a result of lack of new jobs being created. And the kinds of jobs that machines can easily replace are low-end jobs, blue-collar workers, call center operators. And I mean, that's an area of our economy that we're looking to grow. We've got 140 or 50,000 call center seats now. A big chunk of those are outsourced from the UK and elsewhere. If those jobs would be automated, it means more unemployment, more people sitting, less foreign currency, more people on the streets. So, one has to think about ways of bringing people, giving people access to technology, getting internet access into areas that currently don't have. We've been talking to young unemployed graduates that are sitting at home and can't find work. And one of the factors of them not being able to find jobs is because they don't have enough money to get to to travel to an internet cafe to apply for a job and then go back multiple times to get a response from an employer, and then having to travel great distances to get interviewed and tested, and then before be able to find a job, and then only be able to move to a new area, find accommodation. So the lack of technology and internet in remote areas is exacerbating the unemployment problem in the country. So I guess the question about this slide is this actually something that's feasible? Am I smoking my socks by suggesting that in future artificial intelligence will play a role in me getting a job? I think if you look at companies like FNB, Unilever, all of these guys are using AI now already to sift through CVs before shortlisting candidates for jobs. So if we're looking for jobs, well, our kids are looking for jobs, and they're not on LinkedIn, not on certain job boards, don't have the right hashtags on their CV, aren't representing their skills in a way that's easily searchable by a machine, our chances of finding employment in the future are going to be curtailed. So LinkedIn's using AI to do job matches for potential employers. So I think you can expect that this to become a standard through the industry, where people are searching for the right capability, the right skill sets to do a job. That search is going to take place using AI, and it's going to be done online. So the old boys networks of old are becoming less powerful as a result of that thing of, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's now being augmented by how easily can I search for you and find you, and are your skill sets available to an algorithm? So I think these are the kind of things that we have to take into account when looking for jobs into the future. I mean, a number of industries I could have picked on to just kind of give examples of just how disruptive the world's become. I mean, I could have put on one from the retail space, where I think the top 10 retailers in the US over the last 15 years have all declined in terms of market cap, in terms of profitability. And Amazon, if you compared that to that group of high-performing listed previously blue chip stocks, Amazon over the same period, the last 15 years, has grown by 4,000%. So it's just like the retail space has been massively disrupted by big platform players like Amazon. Property owners, high street property owners in Sydney and London are now seeing vacancy rates on the high streets for the first time in decades. And the reason for that is that people are not coming to shops anymore. They're buying goods and services online. And that creates a whole new economy out the back of it, because when you're buying online, your behavior is searchable. There's a whole lot of jobs, and we'll speak about those in a second, that didn't exist 10 years ago, that are now, because of this move to digital and this disruption that's taking place, is creating whole categories of new jobs that didn't exist. And lots of those jobs are being created in volumes, and the universities and schools and families that are preparing young people for the future, young people and ourselves, I guess, are not keeping pace. So we're ending up with a skills shortage to tackle all of these new jobs. So here's a couple of big disruptors in the financial services space, and I can't think of an industry that's going to get more hammered by the fourth industrial revolution, smart algorithms, changes in customer behavior than the financial services industry. Good money is an example of where for those of you that are in the investments industry, it will be relevant, because here investors are looking to put money only into certain kinds of stocks. So I might choose not to put my money into anything that's cigarette or alcohol related. It's unlikely. You might choose not to put any money into industries that are burning fossil fuels. You might focus only on industries that are not using child labor to flood the market with cell phones. So you have now starting to have choices around investments because you want to invest for good. Pairs are dominant in the Kenyan market. So this is a mobile operator who's taking on the big banks, and now I think 96% of Kenyans have access to M-Pesa. M-Pesa is now the software platform of choice for the Indian government to dispense social grants. So what you've got is this massive influx of new players, telecoms operators, social media players. Facebook Messenger allows us to do money transfer now. WhatsApp allows money transfer. So the incumbent players in the money transfer space are seeing a massive explosion in competition. So peer-to-peer lending, money transfer, payments. I had to make a payment from a personal account into a business account the other day. When I got to the business account the next day, the money wasn't there. I phoned the bank in a panic, and I said, "Well, why is my money not in in the other account. And they said, well, what time did you make the transfer? I went back and looked at it. I made it at 3:35 in the afternoon. She says, no, but we cut off at 3:30. And I just thought, that's such an indictment on the banking and payments industry that, with all the technology that's available in this day and age, we're not running a 24/7 show. We're switching things off at 3:30 in the afternoon to pop something into a batch for the next day because we need to cash up and we need to balance our books. That's just antiquated. I think if in this country alone we're seeing new banking licenses going to players that are not even going to have a browser-based online banking platform. It's mobile only, and that's Michael Yutar and his crowd. Discovery Banks is a online and mobile bank only. Basically, they have a big branch network. Time Bank has no branches at all. They've got kiosks in Pick n Pay stores. The post office has a banking license that may well get some traction now with changes in SASSA payments. So changes in this world are significant. So just in South Africa, just the 4 new players coming into the landscape are going to appeal to the millennial crowd, and the younger generation today are very comfortable in an online-only world, in a mobile-only world. And they don't expect to see branches, and they don't expect to see processes that switch off in the middle of the day. There's this instant gratification of wanting change and change now. And, that's just with the big new South African players. But I can't imagine that Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and Facebook are not going to become dominant players in financial services also. So anybody in the fund management space, in the online, in the banking space, and where we have, I think, 140,000 people employed in banking alone in this country, I think that that's just disruptable. And I'm not sure that the players in this market are responding quickly enough to these new threats. I think if you look at where Capitec is today, just by focusing on simplicity and low cost and value, have overtaken Nedbank in terms of market cap. I think they've overtaken everybody but ABSA in terms of number of retail customers. So I think this is just one example, the retail example I mentioned previously, another of just the kind of waves of change that are facing entire industries. And I think if you look across almost every industry, from mining, where algorithms are being used to get more efficiency out of diggers in gold mines, to online government, there's not a sector of the economy that's not impacted by this disruption that's been created by this fourth industrial revolution. So I think we've all got to look hard at our own businesses and see, what are these changes and how do we respond to them, and how do we keep our skills relevant in a world that's changing at the pace that it is now. I don't think we've seen any technology creating disruption at the pace that the artificial intelligence pace of change is creating. And I think it's all fueled by more powerful computers, faster processing speeds, network bandwidth, so cheap computing, fast algorithms, and then massive data sets coming out the back of online transactions is just causing the pace of this change to accelerate faster and faster. I thought it'd be fun to just chat about a whole lot of jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago, because while jobs are being automated away, jobs are being created all the time. And so where are those 70 million jobs that I spoke about in the previous slide that the research is showing are going to happen? And I don't know if any of you do employ any people like this in your businesses, or have any of these skills. But I think what's encouraging about these skills is they don't all require hard maths. Some of them, I think we always have this panic about STEM, and we're not producing enough maths and science students, or I didn't do very well at maths at school, so how could I possibly write code to pull information out of a database or train a robot? But things like head of business behavior, a bias auditor on an algorithm, maybe a bit more technical, smart home design managers, I suppose offers hope for maybe electricians in the current world that that have an understanding of technology and can understand how a smart home would work, and so create career paths beyond those that are available today. But in addition to these things like drone pilots, I have a friend who has a company that flies anti-rhino poaching in the Kruger National Park using heat-seeking cameras, dramatically reducing animal deaths. IBM and Dutch University are doing anti-rhino poaching in Belgevonden, where they're using smart algorithms to track rhino behavior. They can sense when a rhino is in the presence of a person. If that person's not a ranger, based on what they know, an anti-rhino poaching team can go out. So Belgevonden have never lost a rhino to poaching because of artificial intelligence. And so demand for drone pilots is increasing. Driverless car engineers, blockchain developers, social media content curators, social media sentiment analysts. So I think there's so many new opportunities for employment and for creating jobs. And I think it's really important that, that when for those of us that are raising young people, that we become aware of these other career opportunities, because I think the guidance teaching at school, even in the private schools, is just not keeping pace with the kinds of roles that would be required in the future, and then the kinds of skills that would be necessary to be able to perform into those kinds of roles. So I think it's really important just to understand what the options are, but then also what are the underlying skills that need to be developed. And we'll talk a little bit later on about how to get those skills, because I don't think that the old-fashioned, I'll go and do an MBA or I'll do a 3 or 4 year degree are always going to cut it, because a lot of this information for these kinds of roles are available in sort of micro doses or in smaller courses, and a lot of those courses are available from big international universities. They're available online. Some of them are free, so there's no cost to getting those skills. Some of them charge small amounts, but you can do them in your own time, at your own pace, from the comfort of your own home, to fit into your lifestyle. And I think if we're not using those opportunities to keep our skills up to date, it's quite likely that we'll get to a point where we become unemployable, and that the menial jobs or the repetitive jobs that we've been doing have now been automated away. And then what do we do with our time? How do we sustain ourselves financially? Because it's unlikely that we're going to be dying at 67 or 70, which would have been the case 20 years ago. We're probably going to reach closer to 100, and our kids are going to reach 120 or 130. So I think we've got to take a lifelong learning approach to education. I popped this up because it was a very sad case of a prisoner trying to escape from a Brazilian jail and had been burrowing away for 5 years. And when he finally came out, he popped out into a guard room rather than being outside the prison. And I think it's relevant because I think, going back to that point I made about taking a 3 or 4 year course and getting to the end of the 3 or 4 year course only to find that those skills that you've acquired are not in demand or have been automated away. And I think we've got to think about what are the skill sets that we need to build that machines would find very hard to replicate. And I think as soon as there's judgment required, as soon as there's collaboration with other people required, if there's creativity required, if the volume of transactions is low, that's going to take much more time to automate. And so for machines to do creative tasks, they're just not there yet. So will those jobs be automated away in the future? Most probably. The speed that these algorithms are learning at are increasing. Computing power will continue to increase. So a whole bunch of things which are not possible, maybe empathy, showing empathy. The machine can't do today, but machines could become more empathetic in time. So I think it's not about, how will I prevent unemployment forever. It's going to be, how do I stay ahead of a curve, and realizing that curve is accelerating all the time. So I think we've got to build non-cognitive skills. The cognitive skills are more difficult. Writing proficiency, empathy, collaboration, leading teams, self-motivation, grit, being able to keep persisting and until the problem is resolved, not giving up after the first attempt. Attention to detail. A recent study that was done showed that more than 50% of graduates have poor attention to detail, and I think that's a factor of just multitasking and having too much on the go, and playing games while communicating on social media with friends and listening to a nagging parent at the same time is bad for their brains, and their attention to detail is lacking as a result. And then 33% of students coming out of university lack basic data analysis skills. And in almost any job now, there's a requirement to understand the data that's coming out the back end of what we're doing. I was fascinated with this slide because, once again, we're all, I guess, concerned about this maths and science deficiency that we have coming out of our schooling system, and how we backfill those math skills. But I think what you can see is that over the last 20 years, there's been almost no growth in occupational requirement coming out of hard maths. And I think that's because algorithms are becoming smarter. It's becoming more intuitive to interface with computers. I don't know if any of you use the Google suite of products. We use them at Mindworks, and just the AI that's being built into their equivalent of Excel, the spreadsheet application, where it's recommending which graphs to use, which graphs are best suited for the kinds of data that you're analyzing, and make suggestions on which columns to include and exclude, and starting to augment our ability to be able to do analysis of data. Easier to write extracts of data, easier to build pivot tables, easier to compare different sets of data to each other, consolidation and integration. So as some of that rigor that would have taken a programmer previously to be able to do, that can now be done by an end user, a business professional, has reduced this really big dependency that we had previously on maths. But what you are seeing growing is service tasks, social tasks. So where there's interaction required, where the problem can't be resolved by a bot, and a call center agent is now required to take over from the bot, those jobs are growing. So those are the kinds of jobs that we should be looking to create, looking to prepare ourselves for, but most importantly, I guess, making sure the next generation is picking up. So I just threw this in just to focus on some of what we've called 21st century skills now, that everybody needs to be able to survive and thrive. And these skills are not going to be accomplished in sort of 12-year matric course or another 3-year university degree on top of that. These are lifelong learning skills. And from the left, literacy, numeracy, ICT literacy, scientific literacy, financial, cultural are just going to be absolute foundations, and kids will learn those things at school. We'll keep those skills up to date through Khan Academies and short courses on LinkedIn and other things. And then the competencies, being able to think critically about a problem, be able to solve complex problems, being creative, and having good communication skills. And good communication skills now are not going to be about just doing presentations to your exco or communication with customers. It's going to be co-creating success. We, in this collaboration that Mindworks have with Rainmaker in the UK, almost half my meetings now are online meetings. We don't hesitate to jump onto a video call. We don't expect the person to be sitting next to us. We communicate using Slack, and we solve tasks with Trello, and we collaborate in Google Docs and co-produce presentations for clients while the client's watching us. And so communication itself is evolving, and while we still need good listening skills and be able to read body language, we also have to become proficient in new age tools for communication and for collaboration. And then just and we look at this in the academy where we train unemployed graduates, is are they curious? Are they interested in solving problems? Do they want to go home at night and look for a better solution to the ones that we're currently using? Come back and write and take initiative and write an app to solve a timesheet problem, or go and find a timesheet application that sits on a technology platform that we use currently. We see a lot of youngsters giving up easily when they don't solve a problem, and the grit and persistence of staying with a problem till it's complete is going to become more and more important. And then being adaptable and just flexible and being able to work in different ways. We might use Slack and Trello from a collaboration perspective, but a client might be using the Microsoft suite of products, and we've got to adapt to that and be flexible and be able to work in different ways. And then a really difficult one to obviously for a machine to ever perform is leadership. So we need leadership skills at home, at work, in our sports events, and learning to lead and leading in modern ways that millennials will accept and find, stimulating is going to be so cool, so key. And then just being so socially and culturally aware. More and more of business is going to be done cross-border. Just looking at the speed that translation capabilities are improving, and how you can speak French on a video call now and have the other person hear you in English, or vice versa, is just becoming common practice. And being able to write down things in one language and have a person read that in another language is going to allow us to collaborate with different people in different parts of the world in ways that were not previously possible. But then to do that and to thrive in that world, we're going to have to understand their cultures and their ways of doing things, which means we're going to have to be much more socially aware than we are today. The other point is that I think it's unlikely that the next generation, or even our current generation, are going to start and end their careers in one organization. So lifespan within one corporation, or even the success of one corporation is going to wane much more quickly in the future than it has in the past. So there's going to be sort of micro careers as people evolve and change, and quite a lot of people are not going to have jobs in the formal economy going forward, and the formal economy will procure jobs from websites like Freelancer, Upwork, Fiverr. I think more jobs are being created in the US market now in freelance positions than are being created by the formal economy. A lot of that is Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, people working on TaskRabbit and at Amazon Turk. And a big chunk of people in the future are never going to be employed. But if you're working for yourself as an Uber driver or as an Upwork person, you're going to be being measured very differently to how you were in the past. Every task that you perform is measured and rated by your client. Your ability to be able to get future work is going to depend on your last job or on your track record of jobs. So I think whether we're going to be in this gig economy ourselves now, or whether we'll get into the gig economy later, by becoming an Airbnb host once we've retired and our income levels have reduced and we want to kind of make sure we don't eat into our capital, and so we choose to do gig work later on, or whether we are retrenched from a financial services organization that's downsizing. That's all going to be it's all going to depend how well we perform, how well we market our brand on these websites, and how much effort we put into finding this employment. So I guess we've got to treat ourselves as entrepreneurs. We've got to build our brands, and whether we choose to stay in the formal economy or leave it to become a gig worker doesn't change the fact that we've got to keep our skills up to date. We've got to stay relevant, and we've got to just plan for a much, much longer career or economic lifespan than what we would have had in the past. And I guess that's quite a good pivot back to you, Jason, because you're probably telling your clients this all the time.
What, to work harder?
Or just to realize that you're going to work for longer, and that you've got to stay relevant, because you're going to run out of money if you're going to live to 100 and you've only sort of forecasted your financial longevity to the age of 80.
Exactly. Yeah. The research is showing that amount of people living to 120 is definitely increasing. So, yeah, retirement planning is the whole concept of it has to change, because retirement planning was decided many, many years ago when people were dying before the age of 65. So 65 was set as a retirement age that companies would make profit. Is a 5-year profit that they would make, because they were aware that people would die 5 years before. So they were dying around 60. And that's where the retirement age of 65 came in. But there's no longer a retirement age anymore. So yes, people do need to consider the fact that we're living a hell of a lot longer.
And that might require that I'm going to ultimately rent out my home on Airbnb if I want to travel. I'm very unlikely to have a car. I'll use a car, take a car as and when I need one. So you'll reduce your costs in that way. You might become an Uber driver. I've had in Europe and the US, plenty of retired people that are keeping things going by driving Uber now. Maybe it's just to have company and to have someone to talk to. Maybe it's to create additional revenue, but to feel a sense of purpose in other cases. But we're going to be doing something later on in life, and maybe it's going to be a caregiver, or helping a kid online with a kid's homework. But we'll be doing something to keep out of mischief.
Definitely, yes.
So that was kind of what I wanted to cover, just to kind of give a sense of the fact that there isn't an industry that's not going to be disrupted. There isn't an opportunity not to keep skills up to date. Different skills are going to be required going forward, and that being inside a corporate, that we're not shielded from these changes, because just looking at the retail sector, where really prominent retailers from 10 years ago now are out of business because there's been this massive move online for shopping.
Thanks very much, Martin. I've written down quite a few questions actually that I'd like to chat. So, are you ready to take questions? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got 20 more minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
I won't have all the answers. Please, everyone else, feel free to jump in if I'm waffling or battling.
Thank you. So, I'll ask Jared's question first. When you put up your skills of all the new jobs that are going to be available, where does he find himself a chief purpose operator?
A chief purpose operator.
Chief purpose planner.
Yeah. So I think these are the issues. One's going to have to look at what those jobs are and how they've evolved and what kinds of skills are required, and then what would be good proxies if those skills don't exist for those jobs in the future. So, for example, in our academy is training guys for the robotics process space. So any sort of high volume repetitive tasks that are being performed in like sort of admin areas of insurance companies or fund managers or banks, medical aids are more appropriately performed by a robot. And so we're training young people to become robot trainers, to teach those robots how to perform those tasks. And so you can't go and find a robotics process trainer. They don't exist. So now you've got to look back and say, okay, what skills exist that might be a proxy for a good robotics trainer? And a lot of the guys coming out of the software development space make an easy transition into the robotics space. Or process engineering guys who really understand how a process works and what steps are followed in a process make good transitions into robotics process people. So it's finding proxies for performance using existing skills, but then also augmenting that with specific skills. So specific training designed around that process or technology.
It's an interesting world that we're moving into, hey? It's exciting.
And quite terrifying in some respects, I guess, because if you're battling to operate your iPad or your mobile phone, you've got to be asking yourself, how easily am I going to learn to write code extracts to get data out of a database?
So
program a robot.
An interesting thing that came up for me during your presentation was on I think it was your previous slide. Do you want to go back to that? Where you had the number of skills that were available.
The 20, these guys?
Over here. So your literacy, numeracy. I went to another presentation. The lady is expert on leadership. She actually lives in Israel, and she's agreed to do a talk in February for us. A big thing around co-creation, communication, and social awareness is what came up when she did that discussion, exactly as what you said, in understanding how to communicate to different cultures around the world is really becoming extremely important. She says, because in Israel, number one, you've got to understand what sort of people those are. They're very direct, and to South Africans, they come across as extremely rude. We'll take it as quite offending when they don't leave a message on your cell phone. She says, if you leave a message on your cell phone there, then no one's ever going to return your call. It's just not done. So it's quite important to actually start getting aware of how different cultures do operate and understanding what they are, because if your business is going to grow, and chances are we are going to be operating in a global community and sharing ideas globally, how do you go about doing that? So she's agreed to have a chat to us in February around that.
And just to have local relevance. So with these Rainmaker Crowd, we're doing a lot of work in South Africa, and one of those opportunities is disrupting supply chain into townships. So now you're on a conference call with some really smart, young, aggressive UK guy who thinks he knows everything, but what he doesn't know is about how business is transacted in spaza shops in Alex. So you've got to now we're solving problems, but you've got what works is sort of a global interest, but combined with a local knowledge and a local on the ground culture.
Yeah. So Martin, a question that's come up, actually my father raised, he says, do you get involved in new product engineering? And how do you do your fundraising? You're very involved with the communities, and you're very involved in charities and things like that. What do you do that you find works for you and growing the communities?
So you mean like bringing people out of poverty and So I mean in my personal capacity, I work with an organization called the Alexander Education Committee. And we take kids out of impoverished homes in Alex, high potential kids, and we give them bursaries and extra schooling and a mentor, and put them into former Model C schools, and we assist them with transport and uniforms. And so I raise funds for that organization, and I guess it's a combination of crowdfunding on social media, sports events, but then we also have institutional money coming in from. I guess the BE codes have helped raising funds now, because you can tap into training and development budgets. Those now don't only have to go on employees, but on Black people. And then you've still got your CSI opportunities as well. So I do a lot of work in the transformation, the BE transformation space, as well as in fundraising. So I see both sides I see companies needing to spend in this space and moving money into our training academy and into CSI initiatives. And I also see lots of the other side of the coin, running around and trying to crowdfund and crowdsource funds. And I guess those platforms are becoming really important fundraising platforms. I don't know if any of you cycle and have a Garmin radar on the back of your bike, but that Garmin radar was a Cape Town-based startup that crowdfunded all the funding required and then sold that business to Garmin. So I think funding businesses going forward, getting money for skills is moving into the online crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, co-creating space.
Okay. Sure, thank you. Are there any other questions before we go and start the day?
Go and face the music.
Go and face the music. Okay, I guess not. All right, Martin, thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Jason, for the opportunity.
Pleasure, and we'll be in touch. And thank you all for joining today, and hope you all have a successful day and rest of the month, and we'll all be in touch with everybody soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jason.
Cheers, Martin. Thanks, Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thanks, Martin. That was great.
Pleasure, Jess. It's just very tricky when you don't get any, no one gives any feedback at all. So it's when I'm in a like speaking to an audience, I can see a person's frown on their face or a